How DLV delicious people. I'm here today to review Boogeyman from 2005. So, the one thing that really just lured me into this movie is wanting to see it for a very long time. I've seen bits and pieces of it, like I've seen the guy who sits in the chair, kind of waiting for the thing to come at him. Like I've seen that part, but that's about it. And so I'm like, but man, I want to actually see this film. Like I want to actually immerse myself to finally see what happens in this movie, because every single time like this movie is just kind of like, why haven't you seen it yet? I'm like, god dang it, I want to. But it's just like the thing that kind of like persuaded me not to go into this movie was just because it's not in a convenient app for everyone to see. And so that's the hesitation that I had of like, well, it's not on Hulu, or it's not on a Netflix yet, or it's not even on a Tubi or a Vudu. Uh, Amazon is saying that it's currently unavailable, but you can probably buy it if you probably could find it for dirt cheap if you have a couple of bucks sparing on you, because more than likely, if you were to find this somewhere, you would probably have to rent it. Uh, Possibly. But I'm going to give you a free option, believe me. So you can go on to a Google search and search the word letter C movies. So it's a letter and a word. You can go and search this app and there, in fact, download it and be able to see any number of things: new releases, old releases, smelly releases, farting releases. Why am I saying this? I'm not quite sure. But let's push on. Push on? There is also to be an app called Fox HD Movies that I would recommend someone Google search, download that app also, because the logo will say so, but the title will say something different. It'll say like play 1080p HD movies, blah, 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 blah. That's all, folks. So you can download the combination of those two apps and dare, in fact, be able to watch anything that you want in the world, with the exclusion of there's some limitations every once in a while. Then I would suggest you could probably go into a Google Play Store and dare, in fact, download uh, a app called TV Crush. Three of those apps together, see it all, visit all, watch all. But dare, in fact, let's go into the teeing up version of this movie and let me just talk about it, because I thoroughly enjoy this movie. Oh my god, was this movie like, mm. And I shouldn't have. It probably is like, no man, this is a very small budget of a movie and whatever. I enjoyed it. Really, I love movies like Darkness Falls. I like the horror movie called House, and like this kind of like fit all those things. It kind of gave me all those things, and even though it was like there are some scary moments here, there is much more of a build of this movie to eventually give us some early scares, but then go on and kind of deliver the big reveal kind of thing. That it's kind of like a wait for like this thing to really like show us what's happening, so to speak. But man, once this thing gets going, like I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like especially when we get from like certain locations where it goes from a closet to being under a bed. It goes from one random location to a closet of another. And with that, I'm just godsmacked by like the cool part of that where I'm like, yeah, when really looking at it, like the boogeyman can like get you from a number of places supposedly. And like that's what for me, like I always thought, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if like you had a story where like the boogeyman was just misunderstood, or all of a sudden you found out that he actually was a good guy, and there was something else out there, or maybe it was just like he was trying to have kids be like just stronger, like just build character by them being terrified by him. that would make sense to kind of see the opposite world of things. To have like a Boogeyman series where you eventually have Boogeyman be the hero, and and kids just don't like, and so many people just don't get it. I think that would be cool. I would actually love this Boogeyman if it was done as a show. I think that would be cool. Just kind of have the big, massive build of either all these kids getting taken, or like we could just have like a big, massive build of it all, where we just have a town where just a ton of kids just go missing, or just a ton of people go missing, and then finally we have one kid who eventually goes on to become so and so guy of this town, and then finally he is to be the one that face, so they can kind of do a really build up of all this. And I would watch a show like that. Like, I think that would be like, as long as it's kind of like you get to see the Boogeyman a lot more. And I'm hoping it's not like a CGI'd Boogeyman. Like, I would be fine with them just kind of going and just presenting any kind of Boogeyman that doesn't have to actually be a CGI'd character, which that's what they tried to do in this film. So, with that said, speaking of which, let's tee up this movie. What is to go on here? So, we have a guy named Tim who, of course, had lost his father for reasons, and for reasons of film. And so Tim is to turn around and become much older, and eventually had left the house from which that his father had gone missing from. And so Tim is to eventually go on and find out that his now mother had passed. And so now Tim is going back to his old house and face the Boogeyman. To go on and finally face his fear, because Tim is to always be scared of dark places. He is to, of course, be scared of dark environments. And so you'd really think Tim would just be like, would be like the Darkness Falls guy, where he is like flashlights all the time, and so on and so forth. But like, Tim just has these kind of like these zoning out moments where all of a sudden he's like, just he's thinking of things too hard, or he's kind of remembering certain events that had went on from his youth while he's back in this house. And so a lot of that, I'm just like, man, like, this is so good. This feels like an updated version of the horror movie House, the movie that I've reviewed currently. Unless there's another House movie that I've reviewed, there's only one House movie that I've reviewed. More likely, I'm sure that's probably in the horror reviews, probably. Anyways, pushing on. So we get to where eventually Tim is to stumble back into some old friends, and some old friends decide to go on and accompany Tim in his journeys of things. But we also end up finding this girl that seems to not really have a real home. We'll find out she does have a home, but it just feels like she's following Tim around. So eventually we're going to figure out this story. We're going to go into it because it's about that time to just go into spoilers. So the Boogeyman is, of course, a character that is to, mostly in this movie, come from a closet. Even though they always say it's like, well, always check under your bed also. It's like, it seems like he mostly comes from a closet in this film. I guess because that's the easiest way to just kind of do things. Because, like, why would you have anybody come out from under a bed? That seems like some, like, for how very small, like, there is gaps for you to get out of a bed nowadays. You would really have to build up a certain kind of like way of really actually approaching that nowadays. But anyways, with that said, let's go into that double five, because otherwise that time yet again. Let's just go into it. Spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time we can spoil this movie. So, very beginning of the film is to, of course, tell us that Tim is to be in this office party where I guess someone is leaving. And so, yeah, hey guys, the office is going to be very different tomorrow. I guess these characters are to be working at this magazine called End. That's weird. It's a little morbid. Uh, so, we of course have Tim and Tim's girlfriend Jessica at this party, and it seems that they had met one another through this magazine. It seems like they're still having a working relationship while being a couple. So I guess there isn't any problems with. Oh, you guys are having a relationship? Fired. There's some companies that are very strenuous about that, and there's some companies that don't give a Luckily, these people are with that kind of company. So it seems like some woman is to be going off and possibly retiring because maybe she made a killing off of magazine stuff. I don't know. So we have Jessica at one point asking Tim to get her coat out of this closet. And so Tim is to go there, and all of a sudden he's starting to zone out with a very darkened closet that he is to be reminded, of course, by his Boogeyman character. And so when Jessica is to retrieve Tim and just be like, well, like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I zoned out. Because in the very beginning of this movie that I forgot about, we of course had young Tim, who of course is going to bed. Tim's going to bed for the night, and so all of a sudden we have Tim who's kind of turning out his light ka-ching, and all of a sudden a shirt that is to have a bat perfectly placed to make it look like a person, a character, a so on and so forth. We also have Tim, who I guess had made a Boogeyman action figure because maybe it's a limited edition thing. I don't know. But I guess Tim at some point was to sketch what it was that he thought he saw at some point of the Boogeyman. So Tim, of course, is to go on and chuck his Boogeyman action figure into his dresser. And so he's to also go and take his, I guess, robe and chuck it into some dresser also. And so we accidentally have Tim drop his lamp, and the lamp, I guess, is to luckily not break, but we also have a glass of water that falls and breaks. So Tim's father ends up coming into the room, is like, hey buddy, like, what's going on? And so Tim is like, well, I think it's him. Like, I think he's here. And so his dad is like, okay, all right, well, let's go and let's look under the bed. Let's look in the closet, because of course it seems like the closet is where you're like thinking that he's really at. So let's go and check that out, buddy. So Tim's dad is to open up this closet, and so he's like, see, nothing's there. And all of a sudden he gets sucked into the closet, and then he gets like freaking thrashed around, and like, oh my god, yeah. Yeah, like dad's getting thrashed around horrifically. And then he gets taken, and like cue us now several years later, I think supposedly 15 years later, because I got a weird goofy version of this movie where there's some parts where it isn't all in English, like the title was doing that, and then the 15 years later was doing that, but it was like dude, I can tell what's going on. It doesn't matter. Like, that didn't heavily affect this movie. It's kind of like when I was watching The Matrix Resurrection, where, like, the only parts that I had problems with, like, watching was the goofy text messages were in a different language. But I'm like, dude, I don't care. I can tell what's going on. Nah, whatever. So, Q was 15 years later, back with Tim, now afraid of his closet, still weirdly. So, we now go on. We, of course, have Tim and Jessica, who are to. So, I'm trying to figure out the perfect way to transition here. We eventually have Tim, who is to walk down this like park, where all of a sudden there is to be a jogger that's running nearby, and Tim kind of gets weirded out by that. All of a sudden realizing it's just a jogger. So Tim and Jessica on the very next day are to go to Jessica's parents' place, where of course, Tim is wearing this nice suit and tie, and Jessica's like, "Well, what's up with this? What's up with the tie?" And Tim's just like, "Well, like, just want to just give a good impression, kind of thing." So Jessica's Jessica goes in with Tim, and they're eating dinner conveniently because it's like, "Hey, as soon as we get in here, dinner, great, party on," so to speak. So Tim and Jessica are eating dinner with his family, and so Jessica mentions kind of Tim's life and how he's like a fact checker for this magazine. I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense in my brain, where it's just be like, okay, this guy wants to make sure that he knows the truth about everything, and like a fact checker makes sense for a guy that is to see his dad vanish one night and eventually had to go to a children's psychiatric hospital probably at one point also, and like his mother had gotten into really poor health supposedly, and his uncle Mike had taken care uh of Tim's home while Tim was off somewhere. I don't know. I think he ended up no, I think he ended up living with his uncle for a while. Like that's what happened because his mother got in poor health and his dad is freaking dead because he vanished in the closet. So, but Jessica is going on and telling, of course, the story of Tim and his father had gone and his mother had gotten ill, and so Tim had gone on to live with his uncle for a while, and supposedly they made up this story that Tim is living in a little room at his uncle's bar, which is not the truth. Like they just wanted to kind of have him, like I guess, have humble beginnings, so like they can feel very sympathetic about this guy and just love him even more, as his girlfriend does. So Tim, of course, is getting tired after dinner, I guess, with exchanging stories and whatever. So he wants to just um, go on and go to sleep. And so Jessica is like, "Well, hey, like we're gonna continue down there partying, whatever. Uh, who knows what the heck they're doing?" So Jessica's like, "Well, hey, like I know like you're tired from the long drive here, so if anything, maybe I'll come back and sneak into your room and like maybe give you a little bit of something something." Uh, and so Tim is like, naughty. So Tim goes in there and he is to wait in this room with the light on the whole entire time. Just kind of waiting, just kind of bug eyed and just having trouble sleeping. So when Tim is to realize Jessica is coming into the room, he of course is to turn off the light. and Jessica is to get, of course, closer and closer to Tim. Tim all of a sudden is to touch Jessica, and all of a sudden he ends up seeing his mother instead of Jessica. And I'm like, oh my god, this is kind of cool. I'm like, whoa, this is unexpected. But I've seen stuff like this happen in a lot of horror movies, where all of a sudden you're expecting it to be a certain somebody in the bed, or all of a sudden you have the one person who goes into the bed, and all of a sudden there's something behind them, and I'm like, oh my god, those are always like the the kind of the ugh kind of moments where you always have that uncomfortable thing when like you go into your bed and you're just like, man, like because you always like you can always have like a bunch of pillows or some kind of something that just kind of gives you this like kind of uncomfortable feeling, whatever, for whatever goofy reason. There's sometimes where I've had accidental times where like I'm going in my bed and don't even realize like the cat is just in the bed with me, and I'm like, oh my god, scares the bejesus out of me because I don't realize the cat is just like walking on my freaking chest because it was in the bed sleeping. I'm like, oh my god, it freaks you out every once in a while because it's an unexpected thing. So, so all of a sudden we end up having now Tim confronted by his mother, and so Tim just freaks the f out, and so now he's on the floor of the bed, and then Jessica goes and is like comforting Tim. It's like, hey, what's going on? And so all of a sudden Tim is to get this phone call, and he answers it, and she's like, don't answer it. It's like, come on, like be with be with me in this moment. And so all of a sudden Tim is getting a call from Uncle Mike telling him that his mother had passed. And he's like, okay, I'll be there the next day. And Jessica's like, wait, like you said that you would be here for the weekend, and Tim is saying like, oh, I'll be there as soon as possible. So I guess Tim is to tell Jessica that his mother had died, and I guess they're preparing the funeral for XYZ day. So he has to be there. So Tim, of course, goes on to make it to the funeral and is to almost like be tempted to just kind of get close to touching his mom's uh, coffin with her in it, because that makes a lot of sense, right? To just, oh yeah, she was not in her coffin. Weirdly, yeah, she was in her coffin. She was dead. So Tim is tempted to just touch the coffin, and it feels like uh, his mother is gonna grab him back. So he's like, no, no. Like we just have like Tim just weirdly have this like craziness to him. I don't know what it is, but we also have Tim who is to visit his children's psychiatric clinic and visit the doctor that he used to, I'm assuming, see. And at one point, there is to be this girl just screaming her head off consistently. And Tim goes into that room dealing with this girl, like demanding somebody come and help her. And he realizes what she's afraid of. There's this one little kind of attic thing that keeps rumbling, that keeps trying to open, and this girl's freaking out about it. And Tim is to realize that it's like, oh, she's afraid of it too. So that son of a bitch trying to take this kid. So we go on and we have Tim who is to have his. Oh no, wait. Let's backpedal. So the doctor that is talking with Tim is to mention for him to possibly go back to that house for one night and just spend a night. And maybe that will give him some relief or some comfort, or maybe realize that he was just imagining it all. So Tim is to go off and decide that that is the right thing to do, to maybe finally face his fear and conquer this. So So Tim also, while at his funeral, was to see this kid called Franny. Not actually like with the people. Like he just sees her kind of randomly outside, or kind of randomly like outside where they're kind of keeping this, where they're doing this ceremony. And so Tim is to tell her, it's like, well, yeah, I saw you earlier for some odd reason. Hmm. So Tim is to go off to make it to his house, and while he's driving to his old house, all of a sudden there's to be this bird, this crow, that flies and bashes its beak into the windshield, cracking this windshield. And I'm like, oh my god. Like, it's not all that scary, but like, it's just like, that's like, holy crap, this bird just smacks into this windshield and cracks it a pretty decent amount. And now, like, Tim is just trying to get this bird off his windshield. He's like using the windshield wipers to try to get it off. And then he just like picks it up and chucks it off to the side because it's dead now because of the impact. But before Tim was to go off, Uncle Mike had given him the keys uh, for this house, and Uncle Tim was like, "Well, hey man, like, I'm working on the house, and there might be like people coming to fix it." And Tim is just like, "Well, all I need is one day, just one day." And he's like, oh, "Okay, like it's glad you're here. Like, thank you for being here. Just going to the house, and hopefully no one ends up dead in there, besides your dad, because still probably in the closet somewhere." So we go on and we have Tim going in to this house, and so he goes on and he is to start to remember things. He's starting to have a memory of things where at first he used to go on and uh, remember that his mother and his dad were having a conflict because the dad was to tell him some boogeyman story, and his mother was like, well, hey, like, you're gonna scare him and you're gonna frighten him, and eventually he's not going to, like, he's not going to be able to sleep, or he's not going to. So we had the dad who had the mistake of telling him this story, and then eventually we had this dad that had to confirm to his kid. It's like, well, yeah, this isn't real, but you would be wrong because you end up dead, son. You end up dead, dad. So it was his mistake. He said the story. It's like freaking Freddy Krueger all over again. He said the story, now you end up dead. So we go on, and we, of course, have Tim, who is to be kind of tempted to go back into his room, and then he's like, no, not yet. So we go on and all of a sudden have Tim, who is to see Kate riding her horse, which we never have her go back for it. We never, like, the horse just really just vanishes after this certain part of the movie. But Kate is to be riding this horse, and all of a sudden, once she gets further and further closest to Tim's house, the horse just kind of loses control and has Kate fall and smack her head against the ground. So Tim runs out there and is to go like, "Hey, Kate, are you okay?" And it seems like she might have had a bump, but probably no concussion, probably. So Kate is to go on and get some ice, and Kate was actually at the funeral. And so Uncle Mike was asking Tim, it's like, well, hey, like, so Kate's here, huh? And like, Tim's like, yeah, it's been a while. Like, I had to, like, so because Tim still has a girlfriend, he still has Jessica. So And we immediately have them exchange, like, well, hey, do you have a girlfriend? And Tim's like, yeah, I have a girl. Yeah. Like, he admits it. Like, he's not lying about it. He's not like, yeah, let's you and me go at it right now. Woohoo, because we're both single. Because come to find out, Kate is single. It's like, oh, well, because I guess she's taking care of her dad, which is good for her, weirdly, because you never really see her dad in this film, because Boogeyman. Anyways, so we eventually have it where Kate is to go back to her house because F that horse, right? Kate is to go back to her house because she's realizing that she has to go and make her dad food. And so she's like, well, hey, like, you probably don't have any food in this house, do you? And Tim's like, well, no. So we end up having it to where Kate is just like, well, okay, like, I'll bring you something over. And so then she leaves. So she ends up going back to her house, and uh, I'm trying to figure out how this is like perfectly in line with whatever. I think at one point we have Kate, who is gonna look through her house, and no, wait, no, let's backpedal. So Tim is going through his house because he's to also go on and give Kate a picture. He ends up saying that they look goofy together, and Kate's like, "Well, never heard that. I've heard gorgeous or any number of other things, but I've never heard of goofy." So while Tim is to get the picture, he is to be remembering about the one time that his dad had taken him into some uh, room underneath the stairs and kind of held him in there and told him to count to five, and that like the boogeyman's not going to be in there. So we end up having Tim giving Kate this picture, and that's when she decides that she's going to leave. I know there's a lot of backpedaling going on here. I apologize, but it is what it is. So Kate leaves to go off to feed her dad. So Tim is now going through here, and so he goes on and is to eventually meet up with this girl named Franny. And so he goes on and finds her in this little shed, and he is to go on and ask her, it's like, well, hey, like, what are you doing here? Because Tim had spent some time in his closet after he used to kind of play this little recorder, and he is to now have this scar on his head. And so when he used to kind of meet Franny, like, he goes on as in, like, I just want to cover the closet bit. Um, and then we'll get to the Franny, the continuation of Franny. So Franny's in this little shed, and it seems like she has really nowhere to go, but she does have a bike. And so Tim is like, well, yeah, I saw you at the funeral. And she's like, well, yeah, I'm probably going to sneeze here in a second. No? Okay, false alarm. So it seems that Franny is to have a uh, like a bike, so she's gonna go on home, seemingly. And so Tim goes back to this little shed to find this backpack that says "Do not open," and when he opens it, he finds a bunch of uh, missing papers of all these missing kids, piles and piles of missing kids' papers that he goes through, and all of a sudden he drops one of the papers, and the kid's standing right in front of him. He's like, "Oh my god!" And all of a sudden the kids are just surrounding him. It's like, "Oh no! Oh my god!" So Tim leaves his house because he's freaking scared, and all of a sudden Jessica coincidentally arrives at that same time, and Jessica is like, "Well, hey, like I called your uncle Mike, and he told me everything that's going on. Like, hey, are you okay?" And Tim's like, "No, I just really need to leave this house right now." So they end up going to this motel, room 3, and so really Jessica is really searching for answers from Tim. And Tim is just kind of this like blank slate of a guy because he's just so like he's just been so scared about what all he's gone on to do in that house. So Jessica is like, you know what? How about we just take a moment to just F the world kind of thing, and we just go and get drunk, and like maybe we'll have some fun because we just have this character that is still very seductive. So we, of course, have Tim go off to get some ice, and he's to, of course, come back, find out that there's this family, and all of a sudden this dad from this family was like, boy, hey, like, we're hotel people, ha! Kind of thing. Like, that's the weird hey that we get from that wave, weirdly. Like, hey, yeah, we're all having to weirdly be here for whatever reason. So, maybe their kid's terrified too, who knows? Because there seems to be this weird pattern of everybody in this town being afraid of the boogeyman. So we have, of course, Tim come back, and Jessica is now gone from this room. So that's weird. So we have Kate who comes back to Tim's home because I guess she can just easily go into the guy's house because I guess he just left the door open. So Kate's going through this guy's house, asking if he's decent, asking if he's even here, so on and so forth. So Kate eventually is to just kind of check throughout this house and drop off his food. And so what ends up happening is Tim is to make it back to the hotel and realize that Jessica is gone. Tim consistently calls out for her, but she's mysteriously gone. All of a sudden, Tim is to go and look at the tub and realize there's blood on it. And he's like, oh my god, he took her. So all of a sudden, Tim realizes there's a closet there. So he walks into the closet to all of a sudden appear back at his house where now he is to be jumping out at Kate. And I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. And I know it's like a simple editing job, but it's so fascinating to see that kind of thing where it's like we figured out how the boogeyman works, and it feels like Tim is technically following the boogeyman, and it's leading him to these certain locations, places, and whatever. So Kate was like, "Oh my god, like were you just like waiting in that closet to just jump out and scare me?" As she did technically get scared here. And Tim is like I don't know what I've been doing. And so now Tim has to back check and make sure that he actually went to this hotel or this motel, and he has to make sure that he can go into this room 3 and that the things that were there are still there. So Tim drives Kate to this motel, and Kate is kind of uneasy about this because we have Tim who says it's like, well, like I didn't want to be right, but I am right, and I've been right all along that that this is true, that this is real. So really saying that Tim has lost his freaking mind at this point, sadly enough. But he's right, but still he's crazy. He sounds crazy. So Kate immediately thinks Tim's f***ing crazy. So now we have it where, of course, Tim is to go to this hotel room and there's blood on this tub, and so Tim has realized, yeah, like I was here briefly, but so now Kate has realized that Jessica is now gone, and so Kate is like, you know what, I gotta go home. Like I'm just gonna go home now. Like I'm too tired to just deal with this, because we had Jessica who is just like, you know what, when she was there, like trying to comfort Tim, like, and being exhausted by having to comfort Tim because who knows how many times she has done stuff like this. She got really tired and she got really just like, you know what, F the world kind of thing. So Kate goes on to her home and is telling Tim, it's like, you know what, you really need some help. Like, really need to see somebody. So Kate goes into her house. All of a sudden, Tim is to kind of back away from this woman's house to kind of see the boogeyman in the shadows. And so Tim is now knocking on Kate's door, saying the boogeyman's there. And Kate's like, "No, I live with my dad. It's probably my dad going through the house." So all of a sudden, Kate is now going into her room and she's calling Uncle Mike and telling him, it's like, well, maybe you should head over there because I think there's something going wrong with Tim. Just kind of check on him. I don't know. So Uncle Mike is to make his way to Tim's house. And so while Tim had left Kate, he had gone on to find Franny again, and is kind of sitting next to her on this like little swing, and he's saying like, well, like, how can we beat this? Like, how can we beat this guy? Because I guess they don't actually call him the boogeyman in this movie. It seems like they barely ever, rarely actually say the story or the name of Boogeyman. But so we go on and we have Franny, who is to have both her and Tim go into this neighbor's home that I guess is abandoned because this guy was to die at some point, being taken by the boogeyman. Because Tim was to go on and say that he met this neighbor at one point and realized that his daughter had gone missing. Like this guy's daughter had gone missing. And so from time to time he would kind of check in on this guy. And so I guess at some point that this neighbor had started to go crazy, trying to figure out how to beat it, try to figure out how to get to it and name it and whatever. And we have all these scribbles and all these things all over these walls. And so it seems that they are to figure it out by touching this chair, realizing this guy had tied himself to this chair and was trying to face the boogeyman. So all of a sudden, Tim is to realize that the missing girl is actually Franny. That the boogeyman had taken Franny, and she, of course, is to just be some ghost, helping out Tim understand what is really going on here. Which I'm like, oh my god, that's kind of cool. So we have Franny telling Tim that he needs to go back into his house where originally the boogeyman came from and face him down like we see in this house. And so Tim is to go off to make it to his house where he is to realize that his Uncle Mike's vehicle is now there. And so Tim is calling out for Uncle Mike. Mike, are you here? And so he's realizing, yeah, Boogeyman got him too. So all of a sudden we have Tim going through and nailing down every single door because that's what this guy did. And to the point of him now going on and going into the one room that he originally had in this film. And he goes on to nail down a chair and sit in front of this closet and like, okay, I'm going to face this down. I'm going to face this now. So all of a sudden we have every single one of these doors all of a sudden lose all of these screws because the boogeyman, I guess, got ticked because this guy was kind of nailing down all these doors. So he's like, no, like it's not gonna work that way. So all of a sudden, boom! Every single one of these wood pieces just come flying off to where Tim goes back into the house, just seeing all these wood pieces just going flying out. So Tim goes back into the room, and we of course have it where Tim is to all of a sudden be, I think, going into, and people can correct me if I'm wrong here because this is a weird transition, but I know how this kind of breaks down eventually. We have Tim going into the closet to eventually appear to have shown to him what had all happened from all these other people and why they are all gone now. Meaning, all the people that are to be either Jessica, Uncle Mike, or Kate's father, technically, why are they all gone? And so we have Tim who gets shown that the boogeyman was going into Jessica's tub and consistently drowning her and forcing her down there. And because when Tim was to make it back through to get to where Jessica was, Jessica is inviting him to come back into the tub with her for her to get drowned by this boogeyman. And so he's trying to desperately try to scramble and try to grab her to get her out of this tub, but she ends up getting sucked into there, like the Freddy Krueger kind of thing of Nightmare on Elm Street. And then so all of a sudden, we have Tim who goes to another room to eventually find out that his Uncle Mike was using this nail gun against this boogeyman, and Tim almost got hit with one of these nails. So Uncle Mike was trying to defend himself with this nail gun to get attacked by the boogeyman and get taken. And so Tim goes into another room to all of a sudden find out that Kate is to almost be taken by the boogeyman because I guess maybe her father was already taken. So this boogeyman was going after Kate. So Tim goes on and grabs Kate, chucks her through some doorway for her and him to go back into his room. And then all of a sudden, weirdly, we have the chair reappear in front of them, in front of this doorway to kind of have them now still facing this boogeyman. So we have Tim who goes on and is to face this entity, and I guess Kate is to now realize this thing is real. So we have Boogeyman facing Tim, and so Tim is to go and grab his Boogeyman action figure and break the thing, and so the Boogeyman, I guess, is to now be broken because I guess Tim is starting to like believe that this is going to be hurting this character. So like it's kind of like the It thing where like we finally have Tim who faces his fear and is to start breaking down this boogeyman. And so we have Tim also using this electrical device of a thing to go and smack against this boogeyman to get him electrified weirdly. So we go on and we now seem to have the boogeyman being sucked through this door, and we have both Tim and Kate who are kind of holding on. Like Tim is holding on to this chair that is to, of course, be screwed down, but it's starting to loosen up its screws. And so Tim is able to go on and slam this door closed. And so it seems that when Tim is to reopen that door, supposedly they are to realize that all of this is to now be over with. That the boogeyman is now done. That the boogeyman had gotten sucked back through to where he's no longer going to hurt anybody again. And so, like, I'm wondering if it's just gonna, like, if that just means that like Tim is to now be dissolved of all that, that it's not going to come for him, but it might be coming for anyone else, or that when everybody eventually gets the boogeyman on them, they just have to like face him down, or it's never going to stop until eventually the person ends up getting either taken or whichever. Like the boogeyman just moves on to a another person to eventually force them to face their fears, and then he just continues to move on until he finds a younger and younger character to eventually go after at some point. So with that said, I think I've wrapped up this movie. Maybe didn't go into the perfect parts of all of it, but at the end of the day, also, who knows if anybody really cares about this film. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I thoroughly just was like, this movie. It was so worth the wait. It was so worth me getting to figure out how to watch it, because I was like, ugh, like it's not a convenient thing to watch, but F it, I wanted to see it anyways. Um, it's not on a YouTube or a Netflix or whatever or anything, but I wanted to see it anyways. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.